name is Laurie. Oh. Thank you very much. Unmuting will help. My name is Laurie Slapp. I'm the chair of the Warrant Committee. I would like to welcome you all to the Warrant Briefing and give a great vote of a League of Women Voters who are sponsoring this event. I ask for your patience as we go through this, doing it for the first time, certainly for me, in the Zoom format. So we will do our best to share information with you, to answer as many of your questions as possible. If we just move down here, forgive me for the first thing that I just wanted to share with you, Patrice sent this today just to make sure everyone is aware that Leonard Street is closing as of tomorrow through the September the 8th to allow for alfresco dining, to help our businesses emerge from the pandemic shutdown. So I think we all got a call from the police this afternoon, but again, this is just to make sure that as of tomorrow, the DPW crews will be shutting down the street. To go over the warrant brief, I'm sure this is familiar to most all of you. The idea tonight is really just to get as much information out to town meeting members and have as many questions answered as possible. It's not a time for speeches or debate. That will be for next week during the town meeting. Because we have, as I see right now, 68 participants, we'll ask everyone to keep their questions brief. Ask 2 questions at a time. A 2-minute time limit is the general format. And then we'll cycle back to town meeting members who have already asked the questions once everyone has had a turn. As we all know, this is a very different spring with the remote town meeting format and preparations. And so I was going to ask Mike Widmer, the moderator, and town clerk Ellen Cushman just to say a few words as an introduction.
Ellen, do you want to go?
I understand there's at least 60 of you out there, so that's a great sign. I guess I'm the one who's going to just tell you a little bit about logistics, and then Michael can talk a little bit about how he is planning to approach town meeting this year, which is quite an unusual event. As you perhaps know, the legislature did pass our bill asking if we could run a remote participation or remote access town meeting, and ours in Belmont will take place on June 16th. I know there's been a bit of rumor around as to whether it starts at 7 or at 6, but let me be clear, Mike has decided it starts at 6 p.m. Now, does that mean that if you cannot make it at 6, you won't be able to join us at 7? No, of course. Just like as if you were in the auditorium, we will welcome you with open arms and you will be able to vote and participate fully. So we will not be shutting down Zoom, nor will we be shutting down voting through Turning Point. So over the past 2 weeks, the town clerk's office, supported very strongly by the Belmont media and our terrific, heroic IT department, have been training people. And we've been running, just so you know, out of all those precincts, we've been running 4 classes a day for the past 8 days or 7 days. Tomorrow is the last day. And in addition to that, we ran 5 classes a day for the past 2.5 days, almost 3 days, for our beginners, people who had never used Zoom before, but had identified that perhaps they might be a little challenged with technology or not quite comfortable. And those people did a great job. Most of them, almost all of them, were able to connect. And we are still reaching out to work out some of the kinks with some folks who are a little bit less connected or have some unusual situations. So we do want you to make sure you tell us if there is an unusual situation and you really are having a difficult time. We don't want people to be completely frustrated, who absolutely cannot connect. We will come up with something that you will be able to be present, you will be able to be heard, and you will be able to have your votes counted. Now, just 2 quick messages about it. We will be using Zoom for access, for video access, audio access, to allow people to speak, be heard, and make their questions known or their comments known. We will not be using Zoom for accounting for attendance or for voting. Those must be done through your Turning Point account. I sent out and people thought it was sort of a curt reminder this afternoon. I do apologize perhaps for the tone of that. Maybe I'm getting a little tired. However, we really want everybody to be connected to be able to vote by Turning Point. And you will see how simple it is. Actually, it's so much simpler using Turning Point than it is using Zoom. So if you have been able to connect to this and watch this, I can guarantee you will be able to participate in town meeting. Tomorrow is the last session, as I mentioned, is for Precinct 8, and anyone who missed their precincts voting. And the sessions tomorrow will take place at 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. If you have missed your session, you need to email me so I can get you included, and we can make sure that your secure, password-protected Turning Point account will display during that session. Lastly, I do want to make sure that everyone knows we have recorded some of the most recent training sessions for Turning Point and Zoom that were conducted today, and we'll be posting that and sending it out to town meeting members. Perhaps you haven't been able to make time to get to those training sessions, although you will not be able to do it live and see that your device, your phone or whatever was working and your vote will be counted. You will be able to get everything lined up and you'll be able to see what everybody else has seen. We do ask that probably if you're wondering how to do it, we do suggest that if you are lucky enough to have two devices, a laptop or a desktop, for example, that you use that device to show Zoom so that you'll be able to see the whole video and ask questions or make your comments. However, we also will need you to use perhaps a smartphone to make sure that you can vote with your Turning Technologies app or Turning Point app. So we'll be sending those kinds of hints out. And I have been asked lastly whether or when, excuse me, we will be revealing the link in the invitation for Zoom and the session ID, which will be for Turning Point. And we'll probably be doing that on Monday to allow people a little time to load all their stuff up and be ready. And I look forward to seeing all those smiling faces, well, all those names, hopefully, on the 16th at 6 o'clock. Thanks.
Thanks, Ellen.
Shall I go, Lori?
Please.
Yeah. Thank you, Ellen, for everything you're doing. Dave Petto, Jeff Hansel, it's a remarkable effort. Just to touch on a few points here in terms of what town meeting will be like next on the 16th. First of all, there won't be any of the formalities we normally do. We're trying to make this as streamlined as possible. There'll be no reports under Article 1. And I'm asking town meeting members, if they can, to keep their comments to 3 minutes. There are two changes in the agenda that I want to bring to your attention in terms of how we handle issues traditionally. The first is that we have a so-called consent agenda, and that covers Articles 2 through 6. These are largely routine articles that we consider and vote on every year. So we're going to hold them together as a group. Now, there will be an initial motion asking for unanimous consent to agree to that. If somebody objects because he or she wants to consider the article separate from the group, then that's fine. We will remove it from the group. So we would be looking for unanimous consent. But if we proceed and everybody agrees, we'll do it. We would hear discussion of all 5 articles. We're not going to jump over the discussion. And at the end of any discussion, we'll have one vote for the 5 articles. So its aim is to streamline here a little because these are very traditional, usually non-controversial articles. I had mentioned in my memo to town meeting members, I was going to send a separate email on the consent agenda, but I think it's straightforward enough, so I don't want to overburden you. I would say to anyone here tonight, if you have any questions on this, please email me. You have my email. In any case, mike.j.widmer@gmail.com, and we'll try to get you answers. Or, of course, you can ask questions to the relevant person. Secondly, on the budget, which is, of course, the main focus of our meeting on the 16th. Normally, those of you who have been town meeting members know, we have about 10 or 12 votes. We vote each department separately and have discussion of department by department by department. This time, we're going to have one vote at the end on the budget, but that doesn't mean we're going to jump over the discussion of particular departments. So we will divide the discussion into segments. So I think initially we'll have discussion of the town departments. Then we'll have discussion of Minuteman because there's an amendment to Minuteman. Then we'll have discussion of schools. There's an amendment to the schools. Once we get through all of that discussion at the end, we will then have one vote. But the key is we're not going to limit discussion. We're just trying to streamline a process on the voting. So those are the summary of steps we're taking to try to make this as easy as possible, given that we're stepping into brand new territory here. And lastly, I guess I would just say this. I hope we can all be patient on the 16th. There are likely to be a few hiccups, but you've been on Zoom meetings, you know that's standard, and we've got a great team and we'll work through it. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Mike. Yes, we'll start with our patients tonight. So let's see if we can move through the, oh, no, I'm having trouble with my screen. Bear with me right now. Going through the motions. I really just went through the motions as they were distributed and put down the language on the slides. I don't think we had to spend any time here. There's a preliminary article just to make it all formal that it's a virtual town meeting. As the moderator said, we are not going to have the standard reports as we do at most of the town meetings. I think as has been said, many videos were made by that hold these reports. So check out the town clerk's website over the next few days and you can catch up on all of that. Again, just as Mike was explaining, this is the preliminary article for the consent agenda. What I thought I would do here is just go through the slides, go through Articles 2 through 6 so you can see exactly what's included and then take questions here as a block, again for Articles 2 through 6. So Article 2 is the authorization to represent the town's legal interest, a standard article authorizing the select board to represent the town's legal interests. Article 3 is the salaries of the elected officials. I'm not going to read through everything here. You can certainly see them in the motions that were distributed. I think there's an important point to make that there is no change here from what was in FY20. Article 4 is the enterprise funds for the water and sewer department to fund the expenses and to make the necessary transfers. Article 5 is the authorization for the revolving funds. The expenditure limits in FY21 are just as they were last year in FY20. I do have this slide available if we want to get into more discussion. There was some talk at the Warrant Committee about trying to figure out how much had been actually expended over the past year and what the receipts were to get some sense of how it related to the limits that we're setting and if they are still appropriate. And then Article 6 is the appropriation of a transportation grant. This is from the Uber and Lyft money from the state. The town has decided to split this roughly $25,500 with 79%, about $20,000 going to the Council on Aging and the remaining $5,360 going to community development. So again, that just gives you running through Articles 2 through 6. I have never done a Zoom meeting with over 100 people, so I hope I can get the see the hands up here to make sure we get all questions answered. But if there are any questions or information anyone would like about any of these, please raise your hand. We will try to do our best to answer all questions this evening. And another thing we had talked about is just to note them down so we can have an FAQ page ready on the town clerk's website. If there's anything we can't answer tonight, we will certainly get the information to you as best we can and as soon as we can. Is there anyone who would like to raise a question about any of these Articles 2 through 6? I'm just scanning through my participant list here. I don't see anyone. that's the case. One more scan here. Yes,
Lori, it's Chris. I did have a
Chris.
question.
Oh, sorry, please go right ahead.
No, that's okay. It's related to the water, Chris Doyle, precinct 1. And it's related to the water department enterprise fund transfers. And I think I should raise it here, although I guess it will link, I guess my point will link over to the main budget with the capital budget, which is that I just would like to, I don't know if anyone is here from Public Works, but I wanted to raise the question of how Public Works intends to coordinate the road, the piping. Before this FY21, they've closely coordinated pipe replacements with street repairs. This year, the capital budget delays most street repairs, but the water department is continuing. And I'm speaking about this as a general point, but also quite specifically about 3 streets that are under construction now at the end of FY20 for the water department: Fairmont, Highland, and Cedar. I happen to live on Cedar, which are the water department is finishing its pipe replacement, but now the roads budget has removed the money for road repair for those 3 roads for FY21. And so the roads are quite cut up. So while I'm drawing this as a specific example because these roads are almost impassable, it brings up an important point about how the highway division and the water department are going to coordinate, because you can't have a lot of streets in the condition that these 3 are with delays in street repairs. So I just wanted to see how they were going to alter their processes.
Hi, this is Jay Marcotte. I can answer that question.
Thank you.
Hi, what we would end up doing, we actually, for next year's water main project, or FY21's water main project, we actually took one of the major streets off of the list so we can put more money towards I hate the phrasing of it, but more of a permanent temporary patch on the streets that we'd be opening up like now and in next year. So it would give the permanent temporary patch would last longer, hopefully when Glenn's group and can get back on track in the following year. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Judy Fines, I see your hand is up.
Hi, Lori. Yeah, Judy Fines, Precinct 5. I had a quick question about that transportation money that was split between the Council on Aging and the Community Development Department. What does Community Development do with that?
Hi, Glenn Clancy, Director of Community Development. So Judy, what we would do with that money is we'd put it towards the construction and the installation of the traffic signals at Lexington and Sycamore Street. We're actually opening the bid documents for that project at the end of this month, and that $5,300 plus or minus dollars will help us pay for the improvements we're making at that intersection.
Okay, good use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Juliet Jenkins, I see your hands up.
Hi, sorry, I had to unmute. This is just following up with Chris Doyle. So for Jay Marcotte, I guess, my road happened to be, I thought, on the water main replacement list, Lorimer Road. So if it's a quick answer, are we still on the list or we're not?
I don't have the list in front of me right now.
Okay.
Okay. I can make a quick text and get that answer.
Oh, that would be super. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. No problem.
That's it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions regarding Articles 2 through 6 at this point? Kathy Cohen.
So thank you, Kathy Cohen, Precinct 2. A question about how the money from Article 6 for Council of Aging will be used.
Laura, I can answer that. Oh,
Oh,
Lavi, you want to go ahead? That either way is fine
Nav,
with
why
me.
why don't you take it, Nava? I've talked a lot.
Okay, all right, sure. Navanya Vogel, Council on Aging. So the largest part of this list is close to $13,000, which is 20% co-payment of a vehicle that we are applying for through a grant at Mass DOT. For those of you who've been in town meeting members for a number of years, you've known that we typically get our vehicles through the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, and they pay 80% and the town pays 20%. And in the past, we've had to come to the Capital Budget Committee to ask for those co-payments. So this is a way for us to not have to do that and use this particular fund for that. Our Belder bus is so way overdue to be replaced. So that's what it's going to be used for. There are related expenses to purchasing a new vehicle, the paint details, that's $1,000, radio installation in the new vehicle. Then we have some other items. We have a volunteer driver program that hopefully we will renew once we feel safer to do so. And we would like to use $4,400 for a publicity campaign to recruit volunteers as well as riders. And then a few other sundry expenses like backup camera on the vehicle for added safety. That's been a request from our drivers, and some new uniforms, which just for a couple of $100s. We see this opportunity. We realize that the Transportation Infrastructure Fund is, many years would be used for projects in community development, and we're this year we're very grateful to the town administration that we can take part in using some of these funds.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Are there any other questions again, Articles 2 through 6?
Hi, this is Jay Marcotte.
Hi, Jay.
Lorimer is still on the list.
Thank you. There you go, Juliet.
No problem.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to move along here now to Article 7, which is the capital expenditures. I know you all got a capital budget report that was written. I think there's a video as well. I don't know. I know Anne Marie Mahoney is on the call. If there are a few words you want to say, or if everyone has had a chance to look at this and has specific questions, now is certainly the time to ask them. I can just run through the list very quickly as I put these things in the chart. On public safety, there's the ambulance replacement set aside for the ambulance replacement and the cardiac monitor replacement at $65,000 and $7,000. Network firewall for the schools, $30,800. Then lease buyouts for the health department and facilities at $9,000. The Butler window heat mitigation film comes in at $10,000. The Winbrook PA system replacement at $50,000. School radio system upgrade, $95,000. Police station furnishings, $135,000, and the DPW tank replacement at $539,000, $468,000 to be precise. As you know, the story here is that the capital expenditures are drastically reduced in FY21 as we're dealing with, especially with the impact of COVID-19, and had to find savings in the budget when we expect the revenues to fall so dramatically. Chris Doyle, is your hand up, or is? And Kathy?
Yeah, I had one other comment, and Anne Marie, I sent you an email about it. It would be helpful, because we are deferring so many capital budget items this year with good reason. It would be helpful to know those items that were submitted and or approved, but have been put off, just so that we know what we're facing. It doesn't mean that it's gone away. The need hasn't gone away. We've just put it off. Is there such a list that you could share with folks?
Yes, thank you, Kathy, and I did get your email and I did respond to you this morning. Yes, there is a list and it is contained in the, I think in the capital budget written report, the shortened report that we sent out, but it certainly is contained and highlighted in the video that I recorded, which included slides on that topic. I can quickly highlight some of the items right now for you. For example, the Chenery cafeteria, the air conditioner compressors have failed, and we have no longer allocated money to replace those. 2 elementary schools, we had requests for rebuilding the vestibules so that they became secure entry points to those elementary schools. That will not be happening. The Butler window replacement, you saw here $10,000 for film to go over the windows. That is a very stopgap measure. Ordinarily, those of you long-term town meeting members will recall that every year capital budget tries to allocate up to $200,000 for what we call building envelope. And that includes roof repair, window replacement or repair, brick repointing, anything that has to do with the exterior of our buildings. This year, obviously, with the reduced budget, we are not allocating anything for building envelope repair. And so what that meant is the request to replace some of the Butler windows, to get windows that would mitigate the extreme heat that comes into some classrooms, I'm assuming they face the south side, could not happen this year. And so as a stopgap, we are allocating $10,000 just to put some film on them to in some way mitigate that heat. Fire department, radio replacement, department vehicles, and equipment. I also should make the point, which I've made in my other, in my video presentation, as well as my written report, and that is before the requests even got to us, they were pared down. And the capital items that are contained in the operating budgets were also eliminated. So things like police cruisers and turnout gear for the fire department, all of that has been eliminated. So capital in the operating budget, capital requests that we never even saw, and then requests that came to us that we also had to reduce. All of this in an effort to support the operating budget for the coming year. And what I've emphasized in all of my presentations is the Capital Budget Committee is more than happy to be the team player and to support the acute need in the town. We don't want to see personnel cut or programs cut. But by the same token, we've eliminated 1.7 million, all of our roads money, and we've reduced our discretionary money by $525,000. That's a big hit.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I'll watch the video.
Okay, it's outstanding.
I'm sure. Thank you.
Yes, I know we're all facing such a compressed schedule, and the videos really were all released yesterday. There's all kinds of homework available. So I will try to go over this a little bit more. Is there anything else that you'd like to highlight, Anne Marie, as we?
Not really. I mean, I think you've articulated well the fact that the ambulance and the cardiac money, those are set asides that we do every year. And at the end of 5 years, now we have a little savings account that we can use to replace those vehicles. The other things, van lease buyout, those 2 vehicles are electric vehicles. And so we're buying out the lease because it just makes more sense financially for us to do that at this point. Everything else is pretty straightforward. The Winbrook PA system, that's a second amount of money that was replaced. So that $50,000 that was requested, that $50,000 will be added to $45,000 the capital budget allocated last year to completely replace the system. Originally, it was thought that the system could be repaired, but it really has failed. And so now the whole thing will be replaced, but it's $95,000 total. So now Steve Dorrance has all of the money and he can take care of that this summer, which is good. The tank replacement, I know that's a huge amount of money, but the tank is old. It is past its lifespan. It is no longer able to be insured. The code has changed. The tank must be an above ground tank. And as many of you probably don't know, as part of the police construction project, we have removed the gasoline tank and pump at the police station. So now the police will be joining the other town vehicles in gassing up at the DPW. And as part of this tank replacement, we will be adding pumps to that tank to just make it more efficient for the vehicles coming through and getting gas.
Thank you. And as I think I mentioned before, also included in Article 7, there's just over $226,000 for sidewalks.
Yes, that has not been touched, and that is from the 2015 override, which was 200,000, and then every year you add 2.5%, so you get to the 226.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about Article 7, the capital expenditures? A little strange, just like looking out over the auditorium. I'm not seeing anyone with hands raised here. All right, we can always come back if need be, but for now I will move on to the OPEB stabilization fund. This is to transfer a total of just almost $78,000 to the trust fund. $50,000 comes from the general fund free cash, $27,960 from the water enterprise fund, sewer enterprise fund, and light enterprise fund. This was significantly reduced from prior years, again, in an effort to make up for the reduced revenues we're seeing in the world of COVID. Are there any questions, or Patrice or Floyd, if there's anything you would like to add before we move away from Article 8? Wait just a moment, and again, we can always come back. Next is Article 9, which is the heart of the budget. Again, the Warrant Committee this year, because of having to revise the budget with the reduced revenues that were expected with the COVID outbreak, we had a more condensed Warrant Committee report than in past years, but really wanted to explain what the impact would be on FY21 and give a little bit of the outlook for 22. So it was a slightly different format, but hopefully we'll give you the information that is most critical. The Warrant Committee has subcommittees that look at each of these departments. I think most people are on this call, so if you have any specific questions, we would be happy to answer them. Again, this was started off, as you'll probably see in the Warrant Committee report and in the presentations, it started off being a very tight year, trying to stretch the revenues as much as possible from the 2015 override. And then we had the hit of COVID on top of that and had to have another $5 million in expense reductions. So it is very lean. There's clearly going to be an impact on services. You've heard of what it's going to do to capital, but the budget balanced, and it was a great effort from everyone in the town administrators and her team and the school department and the host of select board, school committee, and so forth. So are there any particular questions here? The total budget is about $132 million. There is more detail to be found. Otherwise, I certainly can't share it all here. I'm looking for any blue hands that are rising. And so the way, as the moderator explained at the beginning, everything is included in Article 9. Excuse me, and these next couple of slides, I'll put these available too on the town clerk's website, just to summarize where the funds will be transferred. And this is all obviously in the motions as well. Vincent Stanton, I see a hand raised.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. This is a question about the school department budget. Is that relevant at this point?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm looking at page 43 of the Warrant Committee report, which has a table that summarizes in very broad categories the changes from last fiscal year in different categories of school spending. And the one category that really caught my eye is the one called allowances and benefits, which a footnote explains is primarily health insurance and Medicare. And that's an increasing 11.8%, whereas everything else is slightly up or slightly down. And it's expected that health insurers are going to make record profits in the second quarter because basically all non-COVID-19 healthcare stopped. And so expenditures fell off for the health insurers. In other words, paying out benefits fell off a cliff, whereas revenues didn't change. So I'm just curious why the disconnect between, why should those costs go up double digits for the town?
Thank you. I don't know if John Phelan or Tony DeColigiero are part of the meeting, or I know we have members of the Ed Subcommittee here. I see Jack Weiss from the Warrant Committee. If any of you would like to chime in and answer the question.
Hi, Laurie Slapp.
Hello. Thank you, Superintendent Phelan.
This is John Phelan, Superintendent of Schools. I do not have the Warrant Committee table in front of me. I can look into why that line would be at an 11% increase for the allowances of health benefits, insurance, and Medicaid. I know that goes across our current employees and most likely our retirees as well. But I will research that and get back to the Warrant Committee with the answer, unless Jack, who may have written the summary, may have better and more detailed information.
Yeah, I mean, if I could follow up, Lori.
Sure, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, in Congress, there have been some legislators have called for curtailing excess profits on the part of the health insurers, for the circumstances that I mentioned a minute ago. And so I think if this is something that everybody is experiencing, an 11.8% increase in healthcare costs at a time when healthcare expenditures for the insurers are plummeting, it seems we and others in the same boat ought to have some power to address that.
I expect there's probably help, but we will get a full answer for you.
Thanks.
Leslie Aiken?
My concern is that based on the fact that we really don't know what's going to happen with the schools, based on what the state will do, how can we actually do a school budget? We don't even know how big the classes are going to be, how many teachers we're going to need, and we don't even know what the space will be. How can we actually do this?
Hi, Laurie. Superintendent John Phelan. Leslie, thank you very much for the question. At last night's school committee meeting, the school department presented 3 scenarios that we are looking at to open school in September, depending on the health environment that we face. We have sought advice through our educators, our PTO presidents, our town leaders, through facilities, the health department, police and fire, all of which that we were trying to create an operational plan just to do this next year. We are awaiting guidance from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, who we have a conference call with tomorrow, and who we believe will be providing a structure or overarching guidelines and mandates about how we can operate next year in school. And at that time, we'll have a better idea of what the resources will be needed to fulfill that obligation. But you are correct when some of the news comes out over the last few days that we could only have 10 students in a classroom or half the students in a classroom. We are thinking about those programmatic shifts. The things that we presented last night would be a hybrid environment if that was the case, where half the students went to school on week 1 potentially, and half the students went to school in week 2, or half the students went to school on Monday and half the students went to school on a Tuesday. And we would alternate in-person instruction as well as support from a remote learning environment, while those students at home could access some learning as well. This will really take some customize in different looks of how we utilize our resources and our educators. And we've been working with our union since March in very productive ways for our current remote learning plan and for this planning as well. And they've been very flexible and very willing to be a flexible group of educators to make whatever next year needs to work. So we'll find out more over the next 2 weeks. We have school committee meetings scheduled for the last week in June, mid-July and mid-August, so we can report out. And through this budget process, we have asked the town permission to use our funds remaining in FY20 to be able to buy devices for remote learning if that becomes the program that we need to put in place, and also for PPE materials and supplies for staff if we do open up, and also the fact that if we do need funds, we can use our bottom line authority within the school budget to rearrange some lines to potentially need to hire maybe more nurses if we are opening school, or social workers for students who may need support, or other types of instructional support, whether it be aides or educators to support students at home or in classrooms. So we wanted to start with a baseline. We know that the town is in a very difficult spot, so we felt like we needed to have a foundation budget to work from, and this is the one that we have agreed to.
Hey,
Thank you.
hey, Lori.
Yes.
This is Jack Weiss. Just to
please.
answer Vincent's question, Vincent, I was, given my limited Zoom skills, I was trying to pull up a spreadsheet that I was not able to do while you were talking. But to your question, 90% of that budget category is fringe benefits and insurance and the like. But 10% of it is an allowance for contractual increases, which I assume is a placeholder for union contracts. I'll let John talk about that. That's the number there, because the union contracts are up new this year. That's the number that's showing an increase that wasn't there last year. And that's why that category is increasing by 11%. It's really the allowance for contractual increases, not the fringe benefits, that's driving the increase. The fringe benefits, although they account for 90% of that combined category, are only growing by 2% versus fiscal year 20.
Thank you, Jack. Did you have any other or comment, or was that?
No, that's why I just, I did have my hand, I wasn't trying to jump the line. I did have my hand raised for something else related to Article 9. I know that we have 2 amendments to it, and I didn't know, I mean, this seems to me to be the time that the proponents of those amendments can explain, well, you know, the rationale or thinking or address those. I didn't know whether you were going to cover that as part of this.
Here we go. I had both here. I had written, taken the language from the amendment that Jim Gamble proposed related to the regional school. And there was also one from Julie Crockett, who would like to transfer $366,000 from the unreserved fund balance free cash to the Belmont Public Schools. I know Julie was planning to be here. I think Jim was as well, although he wasn't quite sure if he would participate. Oh, yes, there we go. If you two, Jim, if you would like to say a little bit about your proposal.
Sure. Yeah, this is Jim Gamble, Precinct 2, also current select board representative to the Minuteman School Committee Board. Lori, I'm in a place where cell phone might fall off. So if I fall off, if you can sort of pick up and close out my comments. I'll just start that off. But just for some background, first let me talk about the motivation about why I wrote this amendment Monday morning, and then I'll talk about, I'll close with how it's probably going to be changed. But in terms of the motivation, you have to keep in mind that as of June of this year, Belmont is leaving the Minuteman district, and so we're changing status from a member of the district to a non-member, basically a client using the services there. For comparison, in fiscal year 20, last year's town meeting voted a budget line of $984,000, I think, to Minuteman, and this number that I really just started paying attention to for the first time over the weekend is more than 1.7 million. So it's more than $700,000. It's a 75% hike, and so I just figured that both for myself and for town meeting, people would want some clarity about what's going into that 1.7 figure for this year. First of all, even though Belmont is leaving the district, Belmont was a member in 2009 when a 15-year lease was signed. And so all 16 towns that were members at that time in 2009 are still being assessed an amount every year based on their share of that lease. And so for next year, Belmont's share is 46,000, I think 358. You know, that is a known fixed sum number. Everything beyond that is not tied down yet, because it's going to depend on how many students from Belmont are at Minuteman as of October 1st, when the official census is taken. Right now, our best estimate is that there will be 41 students there, and probably about 20 of those 41 will have special ed services. The way that the Minuteman billing for non-members goes is that you wait until the number of kids actually show up, and then you charge them at a known tuition rate. Every student that Belmont sends is going to be create a charge of $18,400 for the base tuition and $7,778 for a capital fee. And then on top of it, if it's 20 or some other different number of students with special ed services, there's an extra per special ed charge of $7,400 per student. And so if you sort of do that math, you know, using our best guess about the number of students who will be there and what categories they will be in, that comes out to about $1,221,000. So, you know, so I think our best guess of what our Minuteman costs are going to be that, you know, 122 plus the 46, somewhere around $1,275,000, and then you've got to throw in whatever transportation costs are, and that's something for the school department to work out. And so this number of 1.721 is, you know, there's about $300,000 or $400,000 higher. And so I just wanted, I wrote this an amendment trying to provide some clarity about the fixed cost of $46,000, the likely Minuteman direct tuition cost of about $1.2 million, and then to make sure that there's a cushion there just in case if those numbers change. I mean, if more students get in off of the wait list, or if students go to some other voc ed class, that there's money there somehow. As a town meeting member, I wanted that clarity. I wanted to make sure that if we put money aside for that it wouldn't be used for some other purpose. And then also my thought was, since this is a voc ed program, it should be managed by the school, and so the last two pieces are had the money not going through the town side, but in through two different funds that would be under the control of the school committee. After I made the amendment, it was made, I heard from one school committee member and the superintendent, and there was a real lack of enthusiasm for this amendment. And I also, sort of realized that that last piece of town meeting voting to put money into the special ed reserve fund was something that was not allowed through state law. That transfer into that particular fund must be done by the school committee, and town meeting can't tell the school committee that they have to do it. So this practical, the language of this specific amendment isn't going to work if the school committee doesn't support it. And so I'm having a conversation with Superintendent Phelan and the town administrator to try to see if we can at least get the spirit of this amendment is to sort of make sure that there's clear and transparent accounting next fall about what the actual VOCED expenses are, and second, just to get people to say whether or not if those funds aren't needed, will they drop down to free cash for next year, or might they be used for some other purpose? And so
I think you're breaking just as you concluded, so I will jump in.
Motivation for it, and I would think that after our meeting on.
I think this isn't working. I think.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is great, and we will look forward to hearing more when you have a chance after your meeting on Friday, at town meeting next week, to see where this stands. There's one thing that I did want to point out that came up at the Warrant Committee meeting. If we just go back here, I think this actually will change just the language in Minuteman Regional School. It really is includes other vocational schools as well. So that's something that will just be changed before town meeting, just for clarification. Just finish by saying, if we can ask if Julie, if you're here, Julie Crockett, just to describe your proposed amendment. I think it's pretty straightforward, and then I see some hands raised. We'll go for other questions.
Okay, absolutely, Lori. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So this amendment transfers $366,000 from free cash to the school department budget. That figure is the equivalent of 4 full-time employees, full-time equivalents, at totals 366. I've submitted this because first of all, town meeting members have the final say over the budget, and that includes the ability to amend it, although that rarely happens. And in this case, what we're seeing is these were originally in the budget because of, excuse me, I'm trying to pull up another screen. Yeah, these were originally in the budget to address enrollment. We've slowly been bringing the numbers down and keeping them at bay between the 26-28 recommendation for middle school, and now we're going to jump over 30 with the enrollments in the fall. We're hitting 400 students per grade in 6th and 7th. So it's one thing to go the wrong direction in terms of class size, and based on Leslie's comment, we are looking at hybrid or virtual. So I like to think of it as student to educator ratio or caseload. But it's another thing if we go the wrong direction in terms of student engagement or progress in reading and math. These funds are going to provide a buffer so that the economic consequences of COVID don't have adverse effects on students' educations. If kids have setbacks in math and reading, that becomes a compounded challenge in addition to adding the money just to get the class sizes smaller. So that's why in the midst of everything else that's being cut this year, I think it's really important to take a close look at cutting these FTEs for the Chenery. If we look across the town and we say what can be pushed off until next year and what would have to be done this year, for me, this fell into the category of what has to be done this year. So that's why I'm submitting the amendment. I look forward to a discussion on it. I'm happy to talk to as many people who have questions and concerns between now and town meeting.
Thank you very much, Julie. That's very helpful. And as I was putting this in the slide deck, I went back to a slide just as a reference. I would point to you if you wanted to see where the free cash balance stood. This is something that was in the Warrant Committee video report that I put out. The slides are now available on the town clerk's website and also in the Warrant Committee report, but just to give you some perspective to understand where the free cash balance stands. But I do want to go back to the questions here. Alex, I thank you for your patience. I see you've been waiting for some time.
Does that mean it's my turn to ask now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. So I have I guess a pretty uncomfortable question. Obviously, everything is incredibly strapped, and there have been sacrifices already that have been made to try to, among other things, make sure that there aren't, layoffs either on the town side or the school side. And there was some mention of union negotiations. I certainly know that there's a teachers union. I don't know how that works in the town side, but in the private sector, sometimes to avoid the potential for layoffs or whatnot, what instead has been often negotiated with employees is salary reductions to try to avoid losses of personnel and so forth. And I was just wanting for a little bit of education about whether that is something that has come up. Is that a possibility as we face these ongoing incredible challenges? Is that on people's minds, or is that for some reason not possible, or is it subject to union negotiations which can't be discussed at all, or what's the story there? Because obviously labor expenses are a huge proportion of everybody's budgets here.
Thank you for your question. And I should have reminded everyone at the beginning just to identify yourself with your precinct. And I have not been as vigilant about that as I should be. Alex, I don't know if you just want to.
Sure. Yeah, Alex Van Giel, Precinct 7.
Great, thank you. I know it's under the mostly the union contracts, but I don't want to speak for either Superintendent Phelan or a school committee member or Patrice Garvin, the town administrator, if you would like to address the question.
Sure, Laurie, I can jump in. Patrice Garvin, town administrator. We are exploring all different options on the union question. I can't get into specifics on union negotiations, but I will say that the non-union employees, myself included, on the town side are not receiving any increases in salary in FY21. Other than that, we are having conversations. There is a, in the line of where we found reductions after the COVID impact was determined to be about $5 million from the operating budget that we had put together for 21 in February. The COVID-19 showed that we were going to have a $5 million deficit in FY21. We did have some salary adjustments, about $255,000 that I identified in previous meetings with the Warrant Committee and the Select Board and the School Committee that we identified in FY21. So those conversations are happening, and some of those 0% COLAs, as I stated, are being implemented for FY21.
Thanks, Patrice. Yep. Is there any school side information anyone would like to?
Sure, Laurie Slapp, John Phelan, Superintendent of Schools. This past year, during the 2019-20 school year, the school committee and the Belmont Educators Association were fully involved in contract negotiations. We were more than halfway through with all 4 of our units. And because that is an active bargaining process, I would not want to speak publicly about how that's going and where that may end. But we are trying hard to negotiate that and see how it goes into next year. But we had been all the way through a good portion of that process throughout the academic year until the COVID environment stopped those sessions with the union. We had good talks. We had lots of tentative agreements, but we have not completed those. And therefore, I would not want to comment on the aspects of that in a public meeting.
Thank you. And thank you, Alex, for the question. As we pointed out, I know in the Warrant Committee, perhaps the schools too, that this is a very challenging year and that the contracts for all unions are up. And as you say, compensation is a huge part of the budget. So these negotiations are incredibly important. Bonnie Friedman, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. Bonnie Friedman, Precinct 3. I just wondered, much briefer question probably, how does this number for Minuteman compare to previous years? Just so we can understand whether the cost is going up because of the number of students or because of the change of our format. Thank you.
Okay, this is Jim Gamble, Precinct 2. As I said, it is going up mostly driven by the number of students. Making the transition from member to non-member status means that the assessment's not based on a historical, 4-year average or looking back one year, but instead it's going to be based on the actual number of students that show up next year. And so the 4-year average this past year was, I think, around 28. We had 44 students this year. We're likely to have 41. The other thing that kept the assessments low for the past 3 years was the fact that Belmont was exempt from paying a capital fee. And as a non-member, of the 1.2 million number that I talked about, roughly about $300,000 is a capital fee. So it's the new it is the new exposure to the capital fee. It's the higher student base that's being calculated, and it's being offset by a lower base tuition.
Thank you. Chris Doyle, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. I just wanted to add my understanding, and I would maybe need Glenn or Tony from the town budget and the school department budget respectively to chime in. But my understanding of the number, the 1.7 million, that it's really more correctly described as vocational regional schools and not just Minuteman, right. And that it's the size that it is because it includes funding for both about 40 students going to Minuteman plus approximately 25 students going to either additionally to Minuteman, getting off a wait list, or going to other schools, so that in fact it funds a total of about 65 students rather than 40, and that's plus the cost for transportation, which hasn't been in the past. And so that is largely the increase. And Glenn or Tony could chime in with any corrections to that. I don't know if either of them are here. They might not be here, but
I mean, Chris, I can answer that for you. That assessment is 100% correct.
Yeah, Chris, it's Glenn Castro. So as I shared with you before, we have built over and above the 1.3 initially budgeted for 25 students based off the statute, Chapter 75, vocational ed, or 74. 74. So that increased the budget by additional 366,000. Given that we took into account 75,000 per bus at a rate of 3 buses. So that's all folded into that number.
Bonnie, I would also, you might not have gotten there yet, but on page 16 of the Warrant Committee report is a couple paragraphs with an explanation of the 1.7 million.
Oh. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, Lori, this is Jim Gamble, Precinct 2. Could I ask John Phelan to say how many out of district vocational ed applications he signed. There was a deadline of April 1st for signing off on those, and just, I mean, that would be the number that would be much more relevant. I mean, I'm just aware of the 41 going to Minuteman. I don't know of the other schools.
John Phelan, Superintendent of Schools. We have been working with Minuteman for our current 8th graders going into 9th grade and also Medford High School vocational program. Despite early disappointing results, we did have 8th grade students who will be 9th grade freshmen at Minuteman. So there were, of the 25 interested in CTE pathways from Chenery, several did go to Minuteman, and about 4 to 6 will be going to Medford. So it's not the full 25. The numbers are still in flux because we did give some of a grace period to our community because we wanted to make sure that we were able to advocate and support the students and families during this transition year in year 1. The district has been working with the middle school guidance counselor, the middle school principal, and we have a liaison that's been working with Medford, Cambridge, and Minuteman to support families. So right now we have a lower than expected amount of students going to Medford. We have a surprising more than a few students as freshmen going to Minuteman. We are working with Watertown to see if we can collaborate and partner on transportation to both Minuteman and Medford because we both have to pay our own transportation. At this point in time, it looks like we may need to provide our own transportation to Minuteman for all of our students because Watertown has a significant amount of students in their buses full, but we may be able to partner on getting our students to Medford between Watertown and Belmont. This is a work in progress. It has been a first year that we've taken on this kind of challenge. So we have been working directly with the school department in Minuteman in Medford with transportation bidding going out to ensure that we had the capacity to provide transportation to all students who had originally indicated that they would like to go to either Minuteman, Medford, or Cambridge. So we'll keep watching the numbers. We'll turn off the ability to attend very soon. I think all of our families been contacted, and that way we'll be able to begin negotiation with Medford and figure out the transportation and hopefully partner with Watertown.
Thank you, John. Great. I'm going to go here and make sure we get everyone who has not asked a question yet. Juliet Jenkins, I see your hands up.
And I've already asked a question, so I'll be quick. And it's probably a Jim Gamble question. If we were still a member of Minuteman, would he or does anyone quickly know? And it was those 40 students that he's calculating for, what the cost difference would be? Would it still be this 1 point something? Is it 1.2 or 1.7? I'm getting confused and I apologize and I'll mute myself because I'm out.
I think it's 1.7, but I think we had such a long discussion about this in the fall. It's sort of the decision was made. So I think that's an interesting question to ask. If there's a quick answer, I think we should happy to provide it, but otherwise I think it's not as relevant as it once was. So I think we should move along.
No quick answer.
Okay, thank you. Jack Weiss, is your hand up? Sometimes it's hard to tell.
Sorry, I might not have lowered it before.
Okay. And Vincent Stanton, you have a new question?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, after reading that page in the Warrant Committee report, it's clear that we are talking about on the order of 65 students for technical vocational education. Am I correct in thinking that that's a rather dramatic increase over the last 5 years or the last decade? Like that would be a record number? And yeah, that would be one. And this a question also for Julie would be whether I understand that her amendment is to dedicate the 4 FTE funding to the Chenery Middle School. Can town meeting actually direct the funding in that way? And does she know whether that is the priority that the school department and the school committee would have for that money if it was allocated? So those are two different questions, one on one for Jim, I guess, and one for Julie.
I think I'll just jump in terms of the first one for the vocational ed. I think Superintendent Phelan said that there are actually fewer than expected. I think the numbers are changing in the last couple of weeks over the last month. John Phelan, did I have it right that there are more sort of 5 or 6 that are who are not going to go to Minuteman but might be going to Medford or Cambridge? I don't.
We have roughly John Phelan, Superintendent of Schools, as of early June, and we're still working with families. At that point in time, we had 7 existing 8th graders that would be moving up to Minuteman as freshmen. And we had 3 to 5 families that were looking to go to Medford. No children going to Cambridge. They became full sometime in April, and our students weren't being able to access. So our original number of 25, as families began to look at the programming, has reduced, and that's not a surprise because we have students who are interested and ultimately make decisions that are best for their children and best for their families. We did have a few other families who were looking to get certain programming that they were allowed to seek out that may not have been offered at Medford. So we are in discussion with those families to see if we can facilitate a placement for those who cannot get the program they wish to get at Medford and was not able to attend Minuteman. In the end, are the numbers lower than originally thought? Yes, they are. And the reason why those numbers are not hard and fast is we gave families a little leeway because this was the first year of our school department handling the placement process for this CBTE programming.
Thank you.
Lori, this is Jack Weiss. I just from knowing, spending time on this in a former capacity. And Jim, you may know the numbers better, but my guess is that the 40 plus or so that are currently at Minuteman is pretty close to a 20-year high for what Belmont has sent to vocational schools. And so a jump to 65, to answer Vincent's question, would be a 50% increase over our 20-year high watermark.
Right, and we have the 41 that we think are going, and right now there are 30 Belmont students on the Minuteman waiting list. Whether all, I mean, some of them clearly wouldn't come if they got in off of it at this stage, but that there is a much higher level of interest this year than there's been in recent years.
Thank you. And then Vincent, to go to your second question for Julie Crockett's amendment, as I was putting the language on the slide, I don't believe her amendment specifies where those FTEs would go, but Julie, if you want to speak to that.
Sure. So that dollar amount, the 366K, the way that the article is written and the way the amendment's written, just goes into the school department budget. That article doesn't go deeper down in any of those categories to say how those funds will be allocated or need to be allocated. The 366 was the amount of money that the school department had put in their draft budget and that they were planning on to help reduce the class sizes at Chenery. My understanding is that Chenery is still an area of great concern, and
all right, Julie, sounds like you're breaking up
funds students we have.
Thank you. I see Jill Clark, your hand is up.
Hey, Lori, I'm back if there are additional questions.
I think she said she's back if there's additional questions.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Sure.
you very much.
Thanks, Lori. This is Jill Clark, Precinct 7. I have a question back to the school budget. At the presentation, the most recent presentation to the school committee, They indicated continuing to build capacity for the ability to provide remote learning if in the case that may be part or all of schools reopening in the fall. I'm curious if the proposed budget for the school committee adequately provides for funding to provide the resources to students that don't have them as outlined in that presentation, and whatever else is needed to be able to continue remote learning and increase the capacity of the schools to provide synchronous education in the fall.
Jill, great question. John Phelan, Superintendent of Schools. We did present on this last night and touched on it. We were able to use FY20 dollars to secure over $600,000 worth of devices. So every single child will have a one-to-one device pre-K through 12. Not that we want our children on devices all day, but if we do go remote, we would like to have each child in every home have access, because what we found in our remote learning experience from March till now is that there was sharing going on, and that was keeping us from having synchronous learning happen, because students couldn't access a classroom teacher's lesson because they may or may not have access to a device at home because it could have been shared. So yes, we do have the resources. We have purchased those. We have also been given federal grant money for COVID-related expenses that we hope to receive that grant from the federal through the state government, where we would hire technology specialists just for 1 year that could help our teachers embed their curriculum into technology and embed technology into their curriculum and enhance our ability to do synchronous learning, and also create a hub where families can access one place to get their students lessons, learning, and access to their teacher in a more mainstream fashion, and not looking teacher by teacher, school by school. We have lots of families that have multiple children within one school or across all 3 schools in our district. And so we're working on that kind of professional development in technology infrastructure that we will have up and running for September, whether we're in a hybrid model or a full remote model.
So just to make sure I understand, the devices needed to make sure that every student has a one-to-one device were purchased out of FY20 funds, and then some of the additional enhancements that you're talking about are coming out of federal funds. So there isn't a lot in the way of IT additional infrastructure and purchases in this budget.
Correct. We've been able to, with the money that we've had remaining in FY20, to set ourselves up for success for FY21.
Great, thanks, that's helpful.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this stage for Article 9 or either of the amendments relating to Article 9? I'm not seeing any hands raised at this point. As I move through the slides here, again, I would just, I think, to be fully informed, as we consider the amendment that Julie Crockett's put forward, there is a section on free cash on the unreserved fund balance in the Warrant Committee report, and also in these slides. The expectation is the net free cash after the appropriations of this budget stands at 2.4 million. And as was pointed out in the Warrant Committee report, again, everything is so tight this year. This falls below the guidelines that the town's free cash guidelines, which the minimum would have been closer to $4 million. Article 10 is the Community Preservation Committee budget and projects. As you received from the town clerk, there's a full report from the Community Preservation Committee. There are only 2 projects that are going to be considered as part of this town meeting. The others will be taken up in the fall. The first part goes to, appropriate the funds and make sure they all go into their particular buckets as are needed. And then the first one that's part of Article 10 is the town hall chimney repair. There are plenty of pictures. I just chose one. There were 15 at least, I think, in a report that went to the CPC. This is something that really is a safety issue. And I think they're looking for $125,000. But I will stop. And if there's, I think Steve Dorrance was going to be on the call, or anyone from the Community Preservation Committee wants to make a few comments here, and then we can open it up for questions.
Laurie, it's Steve Dorrance, Director of Facilities. I'm here if anybody has questions.
Thank you. I think if the photos say 1,000 words, and it seems as though this is something that is in dire need of repair. Does anyone have any questions? And I think otherwise, the first part of the article is quite straightforward as well, dividing up the funds between the open space recreation, historic preservation, community housing, and then the reserve and administrative expenses. It's pretty pro forma. And then after, the other piece that's related to the CPC is to amend the 2018 appropriation and to use the $250,000 that was set aside for the creation of affordable housing in 2018 to support rental assistance programs for income eligible residents. I know this one too, just to preempt it, there was an amendment that Jack Weiss had put forward for the language of this motion. I believe Betsy Lipson was going to be here from the Housing Trust, or if there is anyone who has, again, from the CPC, would like to say a few words, or if there are questions relating to Article 11.
Hi, Lori, this is Betsy.
Hello.
Hi, I do have slides. I didn't get them to you on time. Do you want me to just walk through them or talk
If you
through
don't
them?
mind, that would be helpful.
Can I share my screen?
Oh.
Or do you want me to just talk through them?
If you can share your screen, that would be fine.
Okay.
I guess I can stop sharing here.
Mhm. Okay, you all can see that.
Otherwise, if this gets too
Oh,
difficult.
were you able to
walk
see
through
that?
it.
I'm sorry, I just shared, but I didn't hear a comment back from you. Sorry.
I believe the host, Belmont Media Center, needs to make
Okay, so why don't you, yeah.
Betsy a co-host. Oh,
She's
she's
a
a co-host
co-host.
now. You should be okay, all set to share.
Okay. Okay, so in response to the COVID pandemic,
There's nothing being shared right now, by the way, on screen.
I'm sorry.
I think maybe it's just easier. This
Yeah, to walk
I
through it.
apologize, everyone, for the technical difficulties here, but
okay,
walking through it, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So in response to the COVID pandemic and the economic shutdown, the Housing Trust participated in a training put together by Mass Housing Partnership for a number of towns that were interested in figuring out what we could do along with state and federal governments to support our residents who have had a dire loss in income. So the town Housing Trust has put together a request to town meeting to expand authorization of our $250,000 CPA grant that was awarded to us in 2018. And the funds would be used for an emergency rental assistance program. It would be administered by a local nonprofit, very qualified housing program. So we have identified several that could do that and that are doing that now. For example, Newton has already launched a program, and we've been looking at the uptake among residents for that program. So eligible applicants for the Belmont program must prove an income loss due to the pandemic and have a household income with less than 80% of AMI. We're also going to prioritize households with less than 60% of AMI. The program would offer 3 months of rental assistance. The payment would go to landlords. And what we've done is used the HUD area median income for rent payments. We wanted to make this a really simple and easy to communicate program for area residents. So the rental amount would be $950 for 1 bedroom, $1,150 for 2 bedrooms, $1,440 for 3 bedrooms. I know a lot of people have heard about the federal and state support that is being offered. So for example, there was a 1,200 IRS, 1,200 there, each person received $1,200 from the IRS for the CARES Act. And that's already reached people. So a lot of people are worried about how to balance food needs and rental costs. And many landlords in town may already be having these conversations with renters. The thing is, the state has a moratorium in place right now for evictions that is going to expire later this summer. And so we're worried about what's going to happen once that expires. And this program, if it were launched, it would get started probably in July and be helpful to renters for the 3 months going into the fall. We, as a town, we don't qualify for the CDBG funds, the federal level funds that are being put together for rental assistance. And as a state, we provide funds for renters who are at the lowest income level. So those at the 50% area median income and below. What this program is doing is recognizing there's a gap. The gap is for renters, and it's for renters at that 80% down to 50% level. Many of us in town are homeowners, and we may already have been in conversations with our mortgage holders to learn about ways to defer payments on our mortgages. But for renters, there aren't really a lot of options. People don't know where to turn, and they end up making choices that, if they're households that already are living close to the bone, they really just don't have anywhere to go. The way this would be set up is, since we're going to prioritize the lower income levels, there will be a lottery. So there's a whole process in place for the documentation that is required to demonstrate loss of income. Applicants must certify they don't have access to other resources. Landlords have to sign off on the application process. And then a lottery would be held with priority going to the lowest income. We're estimating at this point that about 60 to 80 renter households would use this. What's interesting is, since we recently did the housing production plan, we have a sense of local demographics. And there are about 1,900 families, or excuse me, households that fit the 80% or lower AMI category in our town, the 80% to 50%. So we have a lot of households that fit within this target. We think, maybe a 20% or lower would be in a situation where they're in need right now for this program. There are many towns that have initiated this. Locally, Newton is the only one that has gotten it going. We've also heard Lexington, Sudbury, Bedford, Weston, Littleton, Stowe, and others are getting this going. I know that, well, I'm going to pause there to see if there are any questions. I'm sorry you don't have the slide deck in front of you. We presented it to the Warrant Committee and the Select Board recently, so it has been publicly posted.
Thank you, Betsy. I see Bob McLaughlin has his hand raised.
Bob McLaughlin, Precinct 2, member of the Warrant Committee. And the Warrant Committee took this up and they voted, I think, 14-1 in favor. I was the one who was opposed. I'm the Grinch on the Warrant Committee. Why did I oppose it? And
excuse
my understanding of the league briefing is not to make your town meeting argument, so I won't. I'll just very, very briefly say that I had 3 reasons why I voted against it. One, no one has shown me there really is a problem. As I understand it, the federal government, with its $600 on top of the 50% of the unemployment, plus the $500 for each child, that employers, I being one of them, are having trouble getting people to come back to work because they're making more money because of what the federal government has done with the PPE program. And no one's shown me that that really is a problem, number one. And if there is, there's the eviction moratorium that we talked about. Number two, 2018, this came up and a very good presentation was made by the Housing Trust to the effect that they couldn't create any long-term, low and moderate income housing because situations arose and you needed to act on them quickly, and a developer would need some assistance, so there'd be an opportunity to acquire a property. And by the time you get to town meeting, the opportunity was gone. They needed to be able to have flexibility and they had to be nimble. And it was called by people who opposed it nothing more than a slush fund. And I remember standing up and saying, yep, it's a slush fund. But they need a slush fund because they're right. They've got to be able to have that ability to move quickly and create long-term, low-income housing. Now, what they're about to do and they're suggesting is to sacrifice that purpose at a time when it couldn't be more clear how important it is that we raise our low-income housing percentage to get up above the safe harbor of the 10%. Look what's happening on Beatrice Circle. But instead, they want to take this money and they want to give it to 60 or 80 people.
Excuse me for interrupting. I fully respect your opinions, but is there a question? I think this is perfect for town meeting. I don't know that it's appropriate here.
I agree. That's what I started by saying. But all right, there's two sides to the question. And there's bad optics here to give away $250,000 when we're looking at an override to get passed and when we may be laying off people. So I agree. I didn't mean to make the argument to get me started. I'm a lawyer. I get paid for what by the word, I guess. I won't say.
But thanks for bringing up that the warrant committee supported this 14-1.
All that will be reported on Tuesday. We will have a report of all the committees and plenty of time for you to make your points. Judy Fines, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thanks. I just, Precinct 5, I just want to add a couple of things to what Betsy said. Just to emphasize, this is all for people who are already renters in Belmont under lease to landlords in Belmont. And we had the chance to look at some data from the assessor's office. An enormous proportion of the landlords for our rental stock are small owners who live in Belmont themselves. So this affects, if their renters can't pay the rent, then they're going to have trouble paying their property taxes. This is really important to the town's finances as well.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this point for Article 11? I'm not seeing anything at this point. I look forward to a lively debate on Tuesday.
Yeah, I will. Do you want to move on to the amendment, Lori, or should I comment on that?
Yep. Let me just say if Jack Weiss would just like to say a few words since he put forth the amendment, and then Betsy, yes, please chime in.
Sure, and I put excuse me, Jack Weiss, Precinct 1. This is a question. This is based on a question that I asked at the Warrant Committee. The report that we got from the Housing Trust or the CPC talked about 50%. That the subsidy or the assistance would really represent 50% of the Section 8 number, which I don't have the numbers in front of me, is something on the order of $1,800 a month for a 1-bedroom, $2,200 a month as rent for a 2-bedroom. Recalling those numbers off the top of my head. But since the report was based on, this notion of 50%, my comment was, or question was, couldn't we have the program be the lesser of 50% of what the tenant's actually paying, or 50% of that fair market rent number, so that for those tenants who were below that, we weren't subsidizing them more than the conceptual 50%. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Betsy because she and I communicated very briefly by email. Unfortunately, I did not see the updated materials until yesterday at about 4 o'clock. It gave me an hour to file an amendment, but I'm happy to. she has tried to articulate to me reasons why that may be, or my suggestion is administratively infeasible. So I'll turn it over to her.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. And so when we presented to the Warrant Committee, Jack raised to this point, it seemed, worthy of pursuit. The idea being that if someone's rent is less than what we identified as the amounts, then could that be the amount that is used for 50%? So again, I just want to say, like, we use the HUD fair market rents. If we have any realtors who are town meeting members, I don't know how successful a realtor these days would be to find a 2-bedroom at the HUD fair market rent in Belmont. So kudos to all you landlords out there if you really are offering your renters these really rock bottom prices. They must be great tenants. So the amount we're saying right now is 1 bedroom at $950, 2-bedroom at $1,155, and 3-bedroom at $1,440. And when Jack posed that, one reason that I was excited about it, I thought, well, if we can take this money further, why not? We've twice now had conversations with an administering agency that is doing a similar program right now to find out what would this mean for them on that end. The administering agency is going to charge a nominal fee for the process in all of this, which is an important thing, I neglected to mention it, but they're going to be running the lottery. They're going to be accepting the applications, determining eligibility, establishing a wait list. They're going to enter into agreements with the renter households and the landlords. They're going to obtain W-9s and disperse monthly checks to the landlords, and then issue 1099s, and then report back to us on everything. I think when we market a program like this, in order for it to have uptake, it needs to be straightforward and simple. And if somebody's going to go through the process of applying and pulling together a copy of the current lease, signature from landlord, utility bills, a termination letter from their employer, pay stubs or verification from employer, acknowledgement from the Department of Unemployment Assistance, photo ID or passport, affidavit from the applicant. If they're going to do all of that, they are going to really clearly need to know what amount they're going to get. And so for us on the marketing materials to have to say in a really simple way, like, it's either this or it's, well, less than this, but we don't know how much. It just felt cumbersome. And that's exactly what the administering agency was concerned about. Newton, for example, is doing 70% up to $2,500. They're just making it straightforward like that. So we felt like the 50% of the area median income was already sort of a low amount to demonstrate some support to help people. The other thing that happens is some renters pay utilities. It's commingled with their rent, and we would need to have them decouple those. I thought at first that might be difficult to do, especially if you have tenants who've been there for 20 or 30 years. They might not really have a clear rent contract that they're signing to pull that out. Certainly that could be done. The reason the utilities was a concern is CPA money can't be spent on utility. It can only be spent on housing like that. So the Housing Trust's opinion is to make it really simple and to stick with the way we had it already, with really clear amounts set forward in the marketing materials.
Thank you. I see Julie, I don't see a last name here, has a hand up too.
Hi, this is Julie Wu from Precinct 6, and I am a realtor and actually also have been on Belmont Helps and talking with people who are asking for rental assistance. And I just want to clarify just about this proposed amendment that for Section 8, they are actually required in order to get the Section 8 vouchers to be renting units that meet the fair market value, the average fair market value or whatever, those that meet, they have to meet those rent criteria. So they are renting at those levels, and they are only having to make up the amount that they're being determined to pay. So it actually could be quite, significantly lower than 50%. So I just wanted to clarify that. I mean, I am totally in favor of the rental assistance program. But I did want to point out that somebody who has a higher income but does not get Section 8 might have to make up a lot more in their rent than somebody who is already on Section 8 and having the majority of their rental already being paid for.
Yeah, so Julie, just to make sure everyone's clear, in
You can
fact,
just identify yourself, just so I think we recognize your voice, Betsy, but if you just.
oh, sorry, Betsy Lipson again. So just to clarify, this program would not serve those who are receiving vouchers. Those who are already on federal assistance for housing would not be eligible for this. So when I was referring to the HUD fair market rents, there's a link in several of the documents that are publicly available on this now on town website. And it's a link that goes to U.S. Housing and Urban Development's page, and the page indicates the regions. We're in a region, the Boston, Cambridge, Quincy region, and the rents are set by HUD for Section 8. But in this case, we are just pointing to that and saying, we're pointing to that amount and saying that's the amount that we're going to use as a sort of a low bar of how we can come into support.
Okay, so somebody who's getting Section 8 vouchers already is not eligible for
right. There are other programs available for them for this crisis.
Thank you. Carolyn Bishop, I see you have your hand up. Let me see if I can. Carolyn, do you have a question? Not there.
Mute, okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry.
It's muted.
It's muted now?
No, we can hear you now. All's good.
When this was introduced, it was introduced and sounded as though it were a temporary, sort of an emergency program. And I remember back in 2018, when we first gathered that amount of money, and we were giving it to someone to find a place to live. And of course, in Belmont, they couldn't begin to find a place to live for that amount of money. Now we have it sounds as though it's very well organized and planned. But my concern is that if it's temporary and we finally get some people settled in rentals, what happens when this money runs out? Because 250,000, $250,000 seems like tons of money, but we know it'll go very quickly. And my other question related is, does this rental program go towards improving our percentage of affordable housing in Belmont?
No, this program is for existing renters who have been, whose income has taken a hit from COVID. And it's to assist those households that are already here in town, have a lease agreement for 3 months to help them pay their rent.
So it is completely temporary just to get them through this. So it really doesn't help our percentage.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions related to Article 11, either the amendment or the main article? Jack Weiss?
Jack Weiss, Precinct 1. Betsy, just to make sure I understood and didn't misread, the $900 or thereabouts for the 1-bedroom and the $1,100 or thereabouts for the 2-bedroom, that's the amount of the assistance or the subsidy that's proposed to be provided, which means that the rent on those units is really double that. So
That's
the
correct.
Section 8 rent is really $1,800 for a 1-bedroom, $2,200 for a 2-bedroom. Do I understand that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for the clarification. Are there any other questions for Article 11? We are nearing the end here. Article 12 was a home rule petition. This was originally set up before the legislature had approved Belmont's remote town meeting. I would ask Patrice or Roy or perhaps the moderator to give any updates. I know at the Warrant Committee, we voted on this as a safety. But if there's anything anyone else would like to say about Article 12 at this point.
Mike Widmer might be the best informed on this at this point.
Yeah, Lori?
Yes?
It's Mike. Yeah, this was a safety valve, if you will, in case the legislation wasn't passed. Legislation did pass, allowing us to have a remote meeting, but we think as it's a precaution to pass this motion under Article 12. It's really duplicative, and I presume there'll be no debate.
Thank you very much. I expect that will be the case. I don't anticipate any questions, but if this is the case, if anyone would like to raise any at this point, please do. Seeing none, I would just like to remind everyone again, if you have any other questions, we'll put this slide deck at the town clerk's office, but there is a email address for the Warrant Committee, at belmont-ma.gov, or any of to the town clerk or to the town administrator. The school superintendent will try to collect all questions and put them in a central document for town meeting members and make those available. And lastly, I just will put this up again. 6 o'clock on the 16th, next Tuesday, is when the town meeting will happen. You absolutely have to use the Turning Point account, as Ellen explained at the beginning, to vote. And the invitation and link will be coming out shortly in a separate email from the town clerk's office. Is there anything else? Any other final questions?
Lori, hi, Lori, this is Roy Epstein. I should say that my bad. In the letter that was circulated to town meeting members today, I said that in the event we needed a second night, it would be June 17th, but it's actually June 18th. But let us all hope that it's not necessary in any event.
Hear, hear. I think that's it. Unless I see anyone else with their hands up, I'd like to thank you all. I think this is an important point to get information out to make next Tuesday, hopefully only Tuesday, as efficient as possible. So thank you all for joining in this evening. And I think that's the end. Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.